Well, welcome. We've got a pretty exciting panel event today. We're talking about exploring the power of generative AI in cloud-native observability. Joining us today, we have representatives from Dynatrace, Microsoft, and Coretek. So to jump in, Brett Decker, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, team. Great to meet everyone. My name is Brett Decker. I'm an AI solution architect here at Coretek. I've been here for about 10 years now, and I really help customers in identifying where can they find value in AI services. We look for opportunities in increasing revenue and reducing operational overhead, and really looking to help guide customers towards AI solutions that are effective in achieving a return on investment. But glad to be here and talk some more about our solutions.
Awesome. Thanks, Brett. Jason, would you like to introduce yourself for the group?
Yeah, sounds good. Excited to be here. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. I'm Jason Ostrowski, Field CTO of North America at Dynatrace. I've spent the last 10 years helping organizations with their observability strategies, their security strategies. Super passionate about enabling those organizations to get answers and solve their most complex business problems with observability data, with analytics, with AI and automation. Outside of work, I love being outside. I love scuba diving and mountain biking and hiking with my dogs. And it's kind of like the perfect time of year to get out hiking with all that fall color. So looking forward to the chat today.
Awesome. Those are all almost as exciting as generative AI. But David, would you like to introduce yourself for everybody real quick?
Absolutely. My name is David Giard. I am a cloud solution architect at Microsoft, where I just celebrated my 11th anniversary a couple weeks ago. And my job is basically to help great partners like Dynatrace and Coretek to be successful in building great products and servicing their customers and help them get applications onto our cloud platform, Microsoft Azure. And I love generative AI, but I think I'm going to give the edge to going outside and spending quality time with my family and animals.
Awesome. Thank you, David. And my name is Robert Lovelace. I'm the director of our Azure practice here at Coretek, and I will be helping facilitate the call today. So let's jump right in. Brett, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Robert. So what are we here to talk about today? One of the first questions is, what is cloud observability? Observability in cloud computing is the ability to monitor, measure, and understand the state of a cloud application or system. And so what this really means is how effective are the solutions that we're providing to our end users or our end customers. And we really want to fine tune how are our products being delivered to those ultimately end users or end customers. And so that leads us to the question of, what is generative AI? And how can generative AI help our end users and customers? And it's really a type of artificial intelligence that can create content for us. Our generative AI models, they're trained on huge data sets, and they allow us to use that data to learn and create new content. So, for example, if we wanted to create some new HR guidelines or policy documents, or maybe we wanted to create some new marketing material, but all of this referencing back on some of our existing solutions or existing data sets, that's what we can help empower and we can help your organizations with. You know, this is a really profound moment for artificial intelligence. And, you know, I always like to bring the conversation back to, how has AI evolved over the years? You know, as we think about things, artificial intelligence, it may be a very new concept as we're beginning to implement it into our day-to-day solutions, but it really stems back into the 1950s, where we started to realize, what could artificial intelligence do for us? And in 59, what can machine learning do to help really benefit the machines that we're using to help continue moving forward? But we're at this pivotal moment now, and since 2022, when generative AI really became a mainstream product, how can we use generative AI to create the outputs for our solutions and really have that written, visual, or auditory responses to some of the main questions that we have about our environments, about our security, about our best practices. And so really that's where we're at now, is how can we develop the generative AI to benefit our business now that it's evolved into a working and a fruitful state. So as we go through our conversation today, a few of the things that we really wanted to help people understand is, along your AI adoption strategy, how does having that real-time insights benefit organizations leveraging AI in the cloud? How can we take those real-time insights and act on them so that our end users or end customers benefit? What are the trends that we've observed in AI adoption? As it's been around for a couple of years now, we've helped a number of different customers in many different verticals, from manufacturing, retail, state and local government, just to name a few. And so what are we seeing in those different verticals? And then how are Coretek, Dynatrace, and Microsoft collaborating together to help the enterprises navigate these AI and cloud challenges? How can we effectively adopt these to see a return on investment? And so that's what we want to really dig into with the group today. One component of AI that we always like to mention is it's just really the surface level that are the generative AI components. And a lot of our platforms, they depend on the cloud native apps, the modern data platform, and the Azure infrastructure. And that's where we really have to marry our cloud observability with our AI benefits and our AI features that we have, as the AI components are built upon the solid foundations that we have in our environment as we begin to adopt those AI services. And one of the things that is important to understand is you can't just jump from start to finish in realizing these solutions. And so as we look at different customers and different environments, we see a consistent strategy for adopting these and really getting that return on investment. We see customers looking at that foundation and understanding what are the key benefits that we could achieve, and then moving into the operational elements of how do we prioritize the AI solutions that we could see value out of. And as we continue to move forward, we then look at what are the strategic initiatives. And these are where we're really starting to key into adding revenue or reducing overhead. And as we look at that fourth category of maturing our AI solution, this is where we really focus in on how can we continue to onboard new use cases effectively. And so what Coretek, Microsoft, and Dynatrace really try to help enable is, let's establish the foundation for your AI platforms so that as your team continues to think of a new idea, a new use case, that they can quickly and easily add that into their existing platform and achieve those observability and those return on investment benefits that the organizations are looking for. So a couple of key concepts that we may reference to today in generative AI are prompts, the data, and the large language model. And so as we talk about these things, it's good to understand that prompts are what we're going to tell the AI services. How are we going to instruct them, and what are we looking for them to accomplish? The data is focused on what do they have access to view and see? What are the types of data sets that they have? Are there HR policy documents, or maybe there are SQL databases that host the data sets that we're looking to do retrieval augmented generation on? And then the large language model, this is what many have become familiar with recently when we think about OpenAI and GPT-4 or GPT-4o. And this is the actual service that we're using. We're sending the prompts to the large language model, and we're giving the large language model the data so that it can provide us a clear and concise response. So these are some of the key concepts that we may be referring to as we go throughout today's session.
All right. Thank you, Brett, for running through that and providing us with a little bit of history as well as an overview of a maturity model. I want to jump into the panel discussion. And before we roll into some of the questions that we have to discuss, I want to open up the chat to anybody as we're talking and discussing through responses, answers. If you have any questions that you all have, please feel free to add those to the questions and answers, and I'll watch that closely, and we can add those to the panel discussion as we go. And then we may, even at the end, if we have time, unmute and allow for verbal questions as well. But please plug them into the questions and answers if you have them. All right. Oh, and that's just what we had said. So first question, what is the value of observability to Microsoft customers who are in the cloud or evaluating migrating to the cloud?
Yeah, so I'll jump in on that one. I think overall we've seen a lot of organizations embrace Azure, embrace cloud native architectures, DevOps practices to achieve the scale, the stability, the speed, the agility they need to stay competitive, accelerate their digital transformations, and drive innovation. But a lot of the times in these new operating models, there's a lot of complexity, and these environments are highly dynamic, right? So it's made it difficult for development, for operations, security to effectively manage those applications. They may be running new platforms, it's on new architecture, you've got that exponential increase in the rate of change, and everything's dynamic. So whole new way to operate for a lot of organizations. And they struggle to get the visibility and the insights that they need, not only to ensure that their applications are resilient and up and running and secure, but to ensure perfect end user experiences, driving that business value and innovating. And so this is kind of why observability is a necessity, right? Especially when operating in the cloud or migrating to the cloud. It's providing that insight into the health and the performance of our applications and our end user experiences. It can simplify a lot of this complexity. I mean, we'll talk today a lot about how we can leverage AI for that, but observability gives operations, gives development the answers they need to quickly resolve these issues. And that observability data, it holds the answers to any questions we may have about our applications, the environment, and it gives us confidence that our applications are running smoothly and securely. Additionally, that observability data knows a lot about the topology and the architecture of our environments. So we can use that data before we do a migration or as we're doing that migration to the cloud to help make those architectural decisions and understand, maybe how we want to, shift applications, refactor applications, rebuild those applications. When it comes to joint customers between Microsoft and Dynatrace, we've actually partnered up to empower Dynatrace to capture, to enrich, and provide answers for metrics and logs coming from Azure Monitor. So it's providing a holistic observability with the best breadth and depth possible across your environment. So if you're running Azure Functions or Azure Web Apps or AKS or VMs in Azure, really any Azure service, right? Dynatrace is providing answers into the health and performance of those workloads. We've also partnered up for things like our Dynatrace Azure native service to help onboard observability data even faster with things like automatic collection of metrics and logs, easily deploying Dynatrace to those VMs and app services through the Azure portal, integrated SSO. So that partnership between Azure and Dynatrace, making it fast and easy to get those answers from observability data.
That's great, Jason. And we are seeing so many organizations look away from running traditional VMs and adopting platform services or serverless services as part of their cloud migration and maturity. And that observability layer is absolutely critical in understanding the performance of the application during this transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I was just going to say, because it might be a new operating model, it might be new architectures, and having that visibility and ensuring that everything's up and running and healthy in that new model is key.
Absolutely. Brett?
Yeah. And just to add on a couple of pieces to that, what we've seen in one example with state and local government, they've been using a lot of AI for code standardization, and so they've been building tools to help improve their application stack, and their code it may exist already today. And so they're using AI in multiple categories, right? To first show what are the needs to fix the application stack. And when we look at observability, that's going to help us key into what are the fixes that we need for our application stack. And then we can help to pair AI solutions with that to help develop the code that remediates some of those concerns that are seen with our observability platforms. And so, in state and local government, they're building AI solutions that help remediate their code based on the insights that we're getting out of our observability platforms. And so, really, the partnership between the solutions is helping enable the agility of their improvements to their portfolio.
David, anything to add from what Microsoft is seeing as part of this transformation and really evaluating the migrations to the cloud?
Oh yeah, Microsoft is heavily committed to building AI solutions and adoption of that technology. I think you see it in our partnership with OpenAI. OpenAI are the folks that created ChatGPT and DALL-E, which you could argue kickstarted this entire recent interest in generative AI. So currently Microsoft is building AI into just about every one of their products. You can see it mostly in this suite of Copilot products. So Copilot products, if you haven't used them before, they are generative AI tools in the form of a chatbot that lets you ask questions in a natural language like English and receive responses in a natural language to do things like summarizing or generating code or documents or emails, all sorts of things. So we see a lot of those things happening inside of Microsoft. I think it was kicked off with this partnership with OpenAI, and I use that word partnership very deliberately. We did not acquire them, but we are partnering with them. They are deploying their solutions on Azure, so that gives these tools like ChatGPT and DALL-E a lot more scalability and reliability, and we are able to take advantage and build upon some of the cool technologies they've built. I'll add to that, since we're talking about observability here, that Microsoft Defender, which is an observability tool, is built on top of Azure Monitor and Application Insights, and it has AI built into it to do things like recognizing patterns. And that's a big deal because human beings can look at patterns, but if you've got AI analyzing logs of things that happen sometimes months apart, that's a difficult thing for a human being to do, but AI can do it a lot more quickly and very efficiently. So, a suspicious email comes in January, somebody clicks on a suspicious website in March, and something weird happens inside of their inbox, sending out emails, then deleting those emails for the sent item folders. Those things right here might seem interrelated or not related to each other because they're happening in different systems. But if we have something overlying, they could do that. That's a huge advantage.
That's great. And I want to roll right into the next question there from that. What is Microsoft seeing regarding AI adoption and how technology, including in your development roadmaps? And I know you kind of touched on it a little bit.
I already started answering that question here. Sorry, I jumped the gun.
I think I was a slide behind, but
so totally. I wasn't looking at the slides. I'm sorry. But yeah. So I'll talk about Defender and its AI. I'll talk about all the Copilot tools. There's some for GitHub Copilot for Word. There's M365 Copilot for all of the Office suites. And there's also one, there's a bunch of them actually. I won't go into them all, but there's one called Copilot for Security, which can do things like analyze some of the observability, so some of the logs that you're capturing. And that's and actually make recommendations to say, hey, this is happening. This looks like it's a threat. Here's how you can mitigate that threat. And you can ask it questions in English or some other natural language, receive responses back in your language. You don't have to know computers to do that. You can look at a script that you've received and provide a flow chart to say, if I were to run this script, what would it do? Sometimes it's really hard to tell if it's like, a cryptic script in a language you don't know, and it's very long, and you think, boy, I should click this, but usually it's not a good idea to click to run a script if you can't vet the source of it. This is a bit of vetting that allows you to. So it's a very powerful tool, and it empowers folks who maybe don't have the technical skills, or even if they do have the technical skills, it can save them a lot of time in doing so and make them more efficient.
No, those are great points, and even some of the Copilot Studio, I was having some fun with that and seeing how it has many API connections into some of our business applications, some of our ITSM solutions. So there's so much energy, so much really neat little widgets and applications that you can build very easily with some of the different bots.
Totally.
Brett,
I just scratched. I'm sorry. I just scratched the
no,
surface
no, go for
on the
it.
products that we have there. But you bring up Copilot Studio. That's one of the low code, no code solutions where you can do things like drag and drop components onto a design surface. Maybe write a little code, maybe write no code, and actually create a chat bot or create some AI solution that not only can query the web in natural language, but also query your internal systems. You can connect it to your HR system and say, hey, what's my vacation policy, or how much time do I have left to spend on vacation, or tell me about my sick benefits. You can write code to do that, but Copilot Studio, Azure AI Studio, these are tools that allow you to do that without writing a lot of code.
Yep.
Yeah, and and just to add on to a little bit about that, we're seeing a lot of customers when they're looking at their AI roadmap is, how do I govern my data as well? And we're seeing a lot of customers being really interested in, products like Azure Purview. And Purview really helps enable customers to get the insights into the data and where is my data moving within my environment. And so you can tag your data, you can classify your data, and you can track your data as it moves through your environment. And so when we see customers looking at, bolting on services as they're adopting AI in Azure, one of those components may be how do I track and create a data lineage for the data that's being referenced by our AI services. And that can be a really huge benefit to organizations looking to track and see who are the consumers of my data and how is this data being accessed internally within my organization, all within that private Azure subscription and restricted to only your users.
Well, that's great. So I want to roll into the next question. This one's an exciting one. So we've seen the investments in AI double this year, with 50% of organizations adopting at least one form of AI. We've also seen the research on AI fairness and transparency increase 5 times since 2014. How has this accelerated adoption of AI tooling influenced corporate strategies? Either Jason or David, who wants to kick that off?
Yeah, I guess I can kick it off. And like seeing some of these numbers, it's amazing to see the increase in adoption of AI. Specifically this year, just from my personal experience, I've seen a lot of organizations that were leveraging AI and in some aspects for a couple years now, but then now it's transformed to leveraging it across the entire enterprise, leveraging new types of AI, and having it be front and center within corporate strategies. So it's not just used in a little pocket for machine learning and data science, but really it's something that's widespread across the organization. A lot of the Dynatrace customers have been using our AI for years now. We've been leveraging it for things like causal AI. So where our AI engine looks at all the observability data, learns and baselines the performance and health of those applications, and then proactively identifies issues and provides root cause. Like we were mentioning before, right, as organizations move to the cloud, really weren't prepared for the volume and velocity of data. So what they were doing, right, is leveraging Dynatrace to have the AI engine look at all the performance data, look at the topology, proactively find problems and get to precise root cause. And so with that, we see organizations, I think the AI kind of used to be a nice to have on observability strategies, but as they move to the cloud, it becomes a must, right? That there's just way too much data for them to sift through themselves. They really need AI at the core of their observability strategy to get answers from that. I think going into a little bit more about analyzing that data too is that recently we see this massive increase in adoption of generative AI, right? Because you mentioned it before, you had the solid foundation of all of that data, but you didn't really have access to that. If you wanted to analyze that deep level of observability data or business data before, you had to learn how to ship this data to a data lake and then manage the data lake and then figure out how to query that data, learn how to interact with it. And that was difficult. That was, prohibitive in many cases. But what we're seeing with generative AI, it's getting added into observability solutions now. And this is what we're doing with Dynatrace. So if you want to ask any question of your observability data, whether that's coming from a log, a trace, user experience data, you can do that with natural language, right? What we're doing is someone can just say, how's my AKS application doing? And boom, it translates that into a language, the DQL, Dynatrace query language that Dynatrace knows, and pops back answers to those users. And so what it's done is it's democratized the data. So anyone can ask questions, right? Security operations, business development. They can ask questions of that observability data with natural language. So you get these massive efficiency gains and much more informed business decisions. Really, it's the adoption of AI that's unlocked the gold mine of data that we have there. So yeah, it's super exciting. I mean, just seeing what customers are able to do and what organizations are able to do with that data is wild.
David, do you want to add to that?
Wow, that's I agree with everything that Jason just said there. It's hard to add anything, but I'll kind of summarize it here that there are two big advantages I think that AI can provide. One is it frees you up from things that are not part of your core business. So if you've got the responsibility to read through lots and lots of documents and understand them and summarize them, that's AI can be really helpful with that. Or if you have to craft emails or write your own documents, AI can help you with that. And if that's not part of your core business, then that's great. That gives you time to focus on what you are doing to help you or help your business or help your customers. Spend more time on that. The other thing is just the speed at which it can do things. It can do things like spotting patterns a lot more quickly, or summarizing documents, or being able to come up with responses often much more quickly than humans can. So that again frees up your time that you can then spend in what you perceive as your core business. By the way, I love the word democratization or democratize. AI building these large language models, for example, just takes a massive amount of data. It takes a massive amount of compute power, and most small companies don't have that kind of compute power. By using the cloud or using services and pre-built models already, this allows you to take advantage of that without having those incredible resources. You can it's in the same way that the PC revolution democratized people, allowed you to have a PC, for a couple $1,000, you could have a computer in your house. You didn't have to have access to a mainframe. Suddenly, small businesses were empowered to do some amazing things. It's happening again. It's another revolution.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Brett?
And just to add on to that, in terms of democratizing, the access to these, super powerful solutions, one of the things that we've seen for leveraging generative AI models on the Azure platform is that customers have been using the Teams integration or the Microsoft Teams platform to help bring the AI model into the tool set that they're already using day to day. And so when we kind of think about the general workflow of our users, maybe that they have a process-based question or an account detail-based question, and they're looking to just get a quick response from that. what we can do is we can help integrate the AI models into your Microsoft Teams solution. And then you can provide the users of your organization with access to ask or query, hey, what is the time off policy within my organization? And that's just a simple HR use case. But when we think about things like the financial services industry, we could extend that to even to customers to ask, hey, how much do I owe on my account? Or when is my next payment due? And so we've got a lot of options to help leverage tool sets that are built and provided to our end users to help provide them the easy access to these AI services so that they don't have to learn a whole new tool set. We can just provide them the value where they are today and where they work today.
No, that's great. I think I'm already getting some ideas of some AI tools that I could use at home that could maybe provide some like recipe or like some dinner options or something. Things that I'm always struggling with. But I'll leave those for my own troubles. Let's move on to the next question. As AI and cloud technologies advance, how do you see these innovations influence market trends and customer behavior? David, do you want to lead us
I'll
off?
totally take that. Because I think earlier, Brett mentioned that AI has been around since the 1950s, which is absolutely true. There's this perception that it's a new thing. It's not really a new thing. I think there is a revolution going on, but a lot of it is around generative AI, and I think ChatGPT, as I mentioned earlier, has really sparked so much interest in it, and there's a lot of hype around that and trying to figure out how to use that. But it's like any disruptive technology, it is going to affect the way that we work, and I think people are going to have to adapt to that. There's some people are afraid that it's going to take over our jobs, or it's become self-aware and the singularity is going to take over, and the Terminators are going to be coming. I don't buy into that, at least not in the short term. But I do buy into the idea that your job is going to be effective. And I think it was Jason who said that it's changing from a nice to have to a must have. And for a lot of us, that's really true. That's always been true in the tech industry. If you were an email administrator 20 years ago, well, that role changed. You had to understand how to migrate your email to the cloud because very few people are managing email on-prem. Same thing now. You have to understand that technology. You need to start saying, how can I use that to do my job better? And if you're not doing that, you're going to get left behind. You're going to be at a competitive disadvantage of others. So that's, I think, the big way that AI is going to affect customers, employees, IT workers, CIOs, CTOs. That's how we need to think about it. It's a tool. It's here to stay. How do we use it to help us?
And yeah, I think you hit it right on the head there, David. So you're talking about individuals trying to determine how AI can improve their workload and what they're doing and reduce their effort and ultimately being able to accomplish more in the same amount of time. And that's why we're seeing within a lot of organizations, it's not necessarily IT that is the driver of AI adoption. Mm-hmm. We get into supply chain, we get into finance, we get into HR, and it's those different business units that's pounding on IT's door saying, hey, we have ways to drive efficiencies. We want to adopt AI. Brett, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, absolutely. A huge component of a lot of businesses is the customer communication center. And it could be that we communicate with our customers via chat or via email or text messages. Or it could be that we have phone calls with our end customers or our end users. And, we've seen in terms of behavior, a huge uplift in that customer communication field for how do we get our customers their data most effectively and efficiently. In a good example that we have, financial services customers, they're looking at establishing that communication with your organization. And what they may do is they may have questions about, hey, what are the standard operating procedures? And it may be difficult for our call centers or our communication centers to quickly get responses to each of those questions that our users have. And what we can help them do is use AI to handle those low-hanging fruit, or to handle the majority of those questions that are being received from a customer, so that our call center or our communication center can really focus on the escalations, or the nuanced questions that are coming through that require maybe a human element to look at or review in more detail. And so we've seen, as far as customer behavior goes, a huge uplift in that kind of communication and contact center, whether it's via a voice medium, maybe something like an insurance provider that are collecting details about a car incident or a car crash that occurred. Developing an AI solution that allows a user to call in and get asked questions that they document the details about. Hey, what's my police report number? And what was the incident involved? Where was it located? And we can use AI solutions to help provide that end user with an ability to provide the car accident, for example, data to ourselves without having to staff a call center in order to just complete that motion. And so, we see a lot of different benefits in, as Robert was mentioning, HR and legal and marketing, and even as far as our call centers or our communication centers that are communicating with our customers.
That's a great use case. I used to run a call center years ago, and people complain about having an automated response. Sometimes they say, "I want to talk to a human. I don't want to talk to a chatbot." But if the choice comes down to waiting for 30 minutes or getting your answer right away, which is better? And if a chatbot can give you an answer in seconds that it would take a human being to free up 30 minutes to free up to even listen to your question, that's a huge advantage. And a good chatbot will say, "You know what? If it can't answer the question, I'm done here. Please wait, and we'll call you back or get in the queue." But
exactly. All right. I want to move on to the next question. So, can you give us your thoughts on AI ethics and what level of governance you see needed in the future? Jason, do you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, sure. So, with AI being at the core of the Dynatrace platform, I'm often asked, right, how is my data being used? Not only my internal data as an organization, but also the customer data that they're responsible for. Is it being shared externally? Is it being used to build a model? Right? Is there a risk of data breach? So I think what's most important is that organizations leveraging AI understand how their AI implementations or implementations from their vendors, their partners, actually work under the covers, right? How is the data being used? Is it being secured? Is it being redacted? And it's important for organizations, like Dynatrace, like Microsoft, to have clarity and transparency on how these work and how data is being used or not being used, right? And how is that being secured? Like for instance, within Dynatrace, our generative AI is built on public domain knowledge, our documentation, our Dynatrace query language documentation, our dictionary, things like that. And customer data never goes back, to tune or train the model. And so having that, properly documented and shared with those organizations is super important. And what I also think is organizations should have a good governance process, right? To ensure any new implementation has the secure and responsible use of AI before that offering is, opened up within the organization and users are able to use it. So, understand how your implementations work, have governance processes around that, make sure it's responsible and secure.
Awesome. David or Brett, anything you wanted to add?
yeah, we could talk all day about responsible AI. It's a huge subject. You brought up the idea of this kind of thing about transparency. Transparency is a big part of it. The data that you're using, you need to understand and communicate what the limitations of that data are. What are the uses for? What it can be used for? What cannot be used for? You need to have some feedback system. If people give that feedback, who's responsible for updating that system? You need to think about in potential biases If there's biases in your data, there may be the biases in the model that you build. You need to think about if fairness, if you're building a system that doesn't work for everyone, if it's building, I don't know, image detection and it's trying to detect faces or hands or things like that, and certain skin tones don't work. There's all sorts of issues to go. You think about what are the potential safety risks involved. If I'm building a system that does self-driving cars, there's a huge potential for damage, and I need to understand exactly what those risks are and mitigate those risks in my models. I'm just touching on the surface here. You did mention the privacy aspect of it, and I think that's a big one. Microsoft has a similar guarantee that our models are built on public data, either from public GitHub repositories, from Bing searches, things like that. And I know customers that are using these tools, they think, well, wait a minute, I'm going to give this tool access to my internal customer data. Is that going to go back into the model? Are the questions that I'm asking go back into the model? And just like you mentioned with Dynatrace, that's also, that guarantee also comes with Microsoft products as well. So big question here we can spend all day on, but I'll just close with this, that some of the responsibility of responsible AI is about the makers of the products. So Dynatrace is giving guarantees that we're going to respect your privacy, the privacy of your data, but some of it is on the users of those tools. Make sure that how you're using that is responsible. If you're using those tools and you're building something with them, think about the fairness of it, the inclusiveness of it, the safety of the tools that you're building with that AI. So it doesn't just end with a product.
Yeah, no, you're spot on there, David. And that's why it's so important to have a proper AI policy within your organization, because then you can either establish that how we can use or proper use of a public AI instance like a ChatGPT or a Bard or one of the public use cases versus an internal purpose-built use case that you have for your organization. Yeah. Brett, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think the only thing to add here is, as we develop custom chatbots for maybe a specific purpose within your organization, one of the things that we can do to help extend that responsible AI framework to your organization is we can have AI models do a quality control reference over the responses that are being generated. And so, if we imagine, hey, we know that our data is somewhat biased, and the result of the answer that we're going to get may be a little bit biased. We can create another AI model that its entire purpose is to review the responses of our output from our first AI model, and then guarantee that they're looking at responsible, ethical measures before they provide that result to the end user. And so there's a couple of options that we have, even as we're developing our own custom chatbots, we can instruct the services to work together to quality control themselves. And when a response gets generated, we can have that response sent to an AI model that says, hey, does this follow our AI responsible use policy guidelines? And if it doesn't, don't send that response as it is. Let's recreate the response so that it is unbiased or that it is following our responsible AI solutions. And so, we're not necessarily limited to just what does the AI solution say in its first pass. We can actually have it iterate on top of itself to make sure that it is following our responsible AI guidelines.
Those are great points, and that also kind of plays into the next question here a little bit. How do we effectively prepare the next generation to live in an AI-driven world? David, do you want to start with that one?
I don't think this is a big issue. I think, like most disruptive technologies, the next generation is better prepared than the previous generation. I'm going to speak as the old guy on this call. That my perception is that when people grow up with the technology, it just becomes second nature to them. I hope our educational system is teaching the fundamentals of AI. I hope they're teaching about responsible AI and the value that it adds. I don't have a lot of insight into that, but just like young people now have no conception of what life was like without having a cell phone with access to the entire internet in your pocket, in your hands. I think people going forward will recognize that we'll just become used to using AI as part of their lives. I think the one thing that I'm always concerned about is that they become so used to it that they stop questioning it. And generative AI is not perfect. It sometimes hallucinates. It sometimes gives wrong answers. It sometimes, sometimes there are multiple right answers, and it may not be the best right answer. And just getting in the habit of always vetting everything that you get from a tool like ChatGPT, for example, or OpenAI. This is your responsibility. I talked about these co-pilot tools. Co-pilots will give you answers. I like the fact that we named it co-pilot. You're still the pilot. You're still in charge. You're still responsible. You have the ultimate responsibility of deciding whether or not the return is correct. So that would be the one concern that I have.
And I totally agree, David. I mean, the next generation's already leveraging it, right? Whether it's, creating, fun content for the internet and creating images and stuff like that, helping with school assignments or actually helping with school assignments, right? Coding, like all that stuff, right? So they're already leveraging it. And I agree with your sentiments. I think the most important thing is to teach them the responsible use, the safe use of AI, and also kind of instilling moral values of the content and the things that they create with that, making sure that's being leveraged for good. I'm just super excited to see what the next generation of computer science students and stuff dream up when they're leveraging AI. It's going to be super exciting to see once they hit the workforce.
Yeah, or even non-computer science students, just people.
Even yeah, exactly.
To build creative content.
I always go straight to code, but anybody.
Yeah, and just to add on to that a little bit, what we're seeing over on the Coretek side is the idea of prompt engineering being a very valuable skill set for the upcoming generation, and being able to properly engage with the AI solutions and responsibly, as the peers are talking about here. But how do we effectively create a question and provide it the data that is needed to get a valuable response out of it? And so, when we think about, what is a question, let's help educate our next generation on how do we effectively create a question that an AI service is going to be able to help us along the sides with. When we look at, some very basic, tasks like, hey, what is my time off policy? That'll be very easy for an AI service to come back with. But when we're looking at more advanced scenarios, like when can I submit my payment if my last payment was made late? When we look at kind of nuanced scenarios like that, the format and the way that the prompt or the question is created may have a huge impact on how the results or the response is generated. And so we really see a value in helping educate a lot of different, the next generation of, employees and workers on how do we effectively create prompts and how do we guide the AI solutions to do what our intended outcomes are.
Brett, the prompt I'm looking for is, are there any discounts that I'm missing before I pay for this? But we'll get there. All right. Last question that we have prepared is, how are Dynatrace and Microsoft helping enterprises meet these challenges together? David, do you want to lead off?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Can I throw Coretek in there? Because I think they've got some responsibility as well. I think much of it is just about awareness, because right now there's a lot of hype around AI, especially generative AI. And technology is just technology. It's not a silver bullet. You can't just sprinkle AI onto your problems and they go away. No, you have to think about how I can use this specific technology to solve my specific businesses. How do those two things fit together? And I think that's kind of education is where we can add a lot of value. People are struggling with that. I heard the analysis, somebody, I think it was Joel Spolsky, who said, he called it management by airline magazine. The CEO comes back from a trip and he said, I just read about this AI thing. And it's supposed to make us a lot of money. Here's the article. Make it happen. And it's not that simple. It's finding out that technology, where it fits into your business model and how you can apply it directly. So that's probably I think, where we can add the most value.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree, David. Right, sharing the best practices, how other successful projects were implemented. Getting visibility with Dynatrace observability, the rich data from Azure Monitor, Azure Sentinel, Davis AI Engine, giving those teams the answers they need, and then also kind of as we talked about the security and transparency aspects of it, right? Help guide what information those organizations should be looking at. How do they build those governance policies? What should they be asking of their vendors, their partners, or internal AI projects? And one other thing that I don't think we talked on earlier today, but AI observability is kind of a new topic as well, because as you're leveraging it, just like your front end user facing applications or any implementation, really you need to understand how that system is working, the stability of it, the load of it, the costs, all of that stuff. So having observability of your AI projects itself is something we can help with as well.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And I met with a CIO not long ago, and we were talking about, his transformation to the cloud. And one of the things that he was really driving into me, or that really landed well with me, was talking about consistency. So moving from that on-prem infrastructure from VMs into Azure, moving to serverless services, and really wanting to create a consistent user experience, no matter where they access the application from, what platform they were accessing it from, whether it was mobile or a thick client, and creating a consistent experience. And then they could go to the business and determine if that needed to be a better experience. But they couldn't talk about better until they had consistency across all platforms. And that was really important. And I think that the Microsoft Azure platform helps organizations have consistent infrastructure and services. The Dynatrace platform helps organizations be able to get real feedback, real metrics around the observability platform and consistent user experience. And then they can go back to the organization or the business with the data to say, is this good or should it be better? And that was something that I thought was just such a really good way to determine where we should invest. And consistency needs to be there before necessarily we focus on what better means. Brett?
Yeah. Yeah, and just to add on to that, what some of Coretek helps establish for organizations is that foundation that we can then host multiple AI use cases on top of. And so what we like to help our customers with is, how can we unify the operational workflow of our AI solutions? And how can we securely, with the most insight to the performance of that application, deploy these services out to your users? And so in some cases, we may have a dozen different use cases that maybe a single AI model is helping us solve, but we've got different instructions coming in from different angles with a different data set on the back end. And so what we want to help customers understand that AI isn't just one use case in your environment, but it may be a dozen use cases from HR to legal to marketing to IT and code development, and they may all be able to utilize the same framework or the same foundation that you can continue to build on and observe, monitor, and then receive value or benefit from.
That's great. I want to take a moment to open it up to any questions. If anybody has anything that was discussed during the webinar thus far that we wanted to circle back on, if there was anything, please feel free to drop those into the chat. I don't know if we have any yet.
Yeah, so I see a question here. What are some of the practical applications where you see AI being used the most? So I can kind of start off with that one. A couple of them are, like I mentioned earlier, in the call center space. We see that customers frequently are receiving questions about their product, about their services, or about their account information. And so we see that being able to enable those end customers to get that data as quickly as possible is a huge value add. And it avoids having to, send an extra text message or make an extra call to our staff or our support center. But as we look at the internal side of these practical AI use cases, the staff who may be fielding some of these tickets, they can use AI services to then quickly get information about what they need to do. So, okay, I need to go update this record, and I need to go get approval from this team. And AI services can help lay out what is the exact process that they need to follow internally. And maybe it could be simple as how do I request time off? But it's a very practical use case where many organizations, they have new users being onboarded day to day. And so that buddy that you can have that'll help guide you through, say, the first 4 weeks or 4 months of your role at an organization, it can be a huge value to the existing team who may have had to spend hours and hours upskilling you and training you on all of the internal processes, where instead today we can use an AI services or an AI service to quickly respond with that information and eliminate the need for all of that internal overhead that you guys might have. David or Jason, any other kind of practical use cases that you guys have seen in your experience?
I'm always thinking kind of from like the software operations perspective, right? And so what I've seen a lot of is maybe systems that aren't going to get modernized, right? But legacy systems that have been, running for a long period of time. Maybe the person who wrote it no longer works there anymore. We're seeing generative AI actually being used to understand how that system performs and write documentation for how it works, how to fix it, things like that, which is pretty cool. We're also seeing code generation, code analysis, rewriting code from maybe some of the more legacy languages into stuff that's more modern, can be ported into the cloud and into new, cloud native type applications. So I always think that that's super exciting. And then testing too, writing test cases, generating test code, things like that. So really just becoming way more efficient in the way that we're deploying software, troubleshooting software, and testing it.
Jason sounds like a techie.
Yeah.
And so am I. And I think you didn't mention it, but I use GitHub Copilot for doing all those things that you talked about. And I find it extremely useful, especially because I deal with a lot of different companies. And a lot of them, I get code that's in a language that I'm not familiar with, or a framework I'm not familiar with, or accessing APIs that I'm not familiar with. And it can get me started in a query, either generating code in that framework or just understanding it.
Awesome. I want to take just a minute here and kind of highlight some of Coretek's areas of focus. So we break it down into 5 primary categories, really 4 technology categories, and then our managed services. The first is security. We have security advisory services, and we provide security operations center and SIM services, leveraging the Microsoft security tool set of Defender and Sentinel. And we always joke around and say Defender for everything, because there's literally about a flavor of Defender for just about everything. A lot of what we spent our conversation and our focus on today is AI transformation and helping organizations build out that AI roadmap, identifying use cases based off of industries or personas and adoption. And then the other area, which is an area that I'm very close to, is our cloud strategy, helping organizations through cloud migrations, cloud assessments, app modernizations, adopting DevOps, infrastructure as code, really helping organizations improve their cloud posture with well-architected frameworks and how they're leveraging cloud resources. We have another side of the business that focuses on smart workspace, which is everything end user compute. So whether it's the end user's application stack, their device or desktop experience, be it a physical device or in the cloud, or even in the data center back on prem. but the cloud desktop, M365. So all of the Microsoft 365 applications, endpoint security, end user security, identity, and mergers and acquisitions. And then all of those Microsoft cloud technologies that we help organizations implement, we can support with our Core Defend security services, our managed cloud support, and our managed desktop support. I want to thank everybody for attending today. If you would like to schedule a conversation to follow up, to discuss Dynatrace, to discuss OpenAI, Microsoft's Copilot, and other AI services, please feel free to scan that the code.
QR code.
QR code. Thank you. The QR code, and we can schedule a meeting with you. And again, thank you everybody for participating today. Jason and David, appreciate your time. Brett Decker, appreciate your time. And